Nintendo Game Talk.
Welcome everyone to Nintendo Game Talk. My name is Koloko, and today I'm going to be talking about Destiny. Now, I struggled a bit on how I was going to properly open this video since this is obviously a Nintendo-focused channel, but first and foremost, I'm a gamer, and I love to play games on every platform. I always have, and Destiny is no different. So, I understand you can see the history of Destiny, the history of Bungie, in any other video, so the only thing different you can see here is my personal take on it, my personal views on it, and it all starts back way ages ago, nay, millennia ago. No, not millennia, it was the late 90s. And that was when it was, I think it was announced a little bit after that. I think it was in the early 2000s when Microsoft was gonna bring out a new system. And I was skeptical, just like everyone was back then, because, you know, it was almost like it was too full already. We had Sony, we had Nintendo, and we had Sega that was failing with their Dreamcast. So in order for another player to come into that console war, it was almost like, I don't know if that's going to work. You didn't believe that someone would be able to do that. It's like right now with Google saying that they're going to bring in a new gaming console. You're kind of hesitant to believe that it's actually going to work. But I went over to my cousin's house. I played Halo for the first time, and it absolutely blew me away. Halo Combat Evolved was one of the best games that I've ever played in my life. It felt like a Nintendo game, and there was something to that, because Nintendo had always been about playing multiplayer, local multiplayer. I mean, the NES and the SNES both had adapters where you can play 4 players. The Nintendo 64 is the first console to come out that had 4-player ready to play out of the box. I mean, there might be some minor console out there, but as far as the larger consoles go, it was the first one to do that. And so Microsoft focused heavily on that aspect, except that they wanted you to play LAN. And it was the first time that LAN play was something that a lot of people did. I mean, there was always like people with their PCs playing Doom, playing Quake and stuff like that. But that was a kind of a minority crowd. You know, it wasn't really something for the general public. This was the first time that a game had LAN play for the general public. And man, there was so many parties. There were so many LAN parties when Halo came out. All the way till Halo 3, there was still people all the time having Halo parties. I remember going to those and just having an absolute blast with them. But it wasn't just the local multiplayer play. It was the games themselves were so awesome, so incredible. You can any level that you play, you could play it differently. It was just a completely new and different experience. Bungie was making a name for themselves. They brought out 5 Halo games before they were bought out, or they made a deal with Activision and they left Microsoft. And after that, they announced their new IP, which was Destiny. Now, Microsoft would continue making Halo games, and I did play Halo 4, and it was a good game, but it didn't have that Bungie magic, in my opinion, that made the first few so special. And so I was kind of devastated when that happened, because I felt like it wasn't going to be the same after that. But then, like I said, Bungie announced Destiny, and oh my gosh, I was so hyped for that game. Bungie announced Destiny in 2013, and in 2014 it was released. I will say that in the history of video games, there has never been so much hype for one brand new IP. Never. I don't think there's ever been, and maybe until Anthem comes out, I don't think even that is going to surpass the hype that Destiny had. Words cannot express how enthusiastic and hyped I was for this game. I would say that this is the number one thing that I've been hyped for as far as entertainment goes in my life. I would say maybe the Dragon Ball Z movie that turned out to be Dragon Ball Evolution, and maybe the Final Fantasy Spirits Within that was also pretty garbage. Besides that, I don't think I've ever been so hyped for a video game because everything was up my alley. It was a game by one of my favorite publishers in Bungie. It was a MMO sci-fi shooter RPG, which I loved MMOs. I love World of Warcraft. I love games like Borderlands. So everything was up my alley. And on top of that, they had these amazing actors in Nathan Fillion, who was still underrated then. And by the way, if you haven't seen the movie Firefly, the series that he was in, Serenity, go watch that movie right now. Stop this tape. Go watch that movie right now.
Don't tell me what to do.
This tape anymore. Anyway, Lance Reddick, one of my favorite actors from the series Fringe, who is one of my favorite sci-fi series, and it had a slew of other actors. And this was nothing you've ever seen before as far as video games go. You've never seen this much star power in a video game. That was another thing. It wasn't just that they were pushing it, that Bungie was pushing this new game. It wasn't just that they were putting all this ad revenue in it. It was all the star power behind it. I mean, let me just list off some of these actors. Peter Dinklage, obviously from Game of Thrones. He was supposed to be he's the ghost. Let's see. Peter Stormare.
That's not him.
Eric Arvari, the guy from The Mummy, the old guy from The Mummy. Peter Stormare.
Oh, that's him.
Been in a bunch of movies. Bill Nighy from the Underworld movies. I mean, John DiMaggio. Bender from Futurama's in it. I mean, there's so many. Even the fish guy from American Dad's in it. And it's just so much. So hyped for this game. This was my dream game. Honestly. If you were to tell me, Coloco, write down a game. Write down your dream game.
Okay.
I would say I would love a shooter with the mechanics of a Bungie game, because they have this. Halo's always been the most solid shooting mechanics. Maybe not the most realistic, obviously, but the most solid, the most fun, the most enjoyable. So the shooting mechanics, the RPG elements, the world of like a Borderlands mixed with the MMO of like Warcraft, with the most amazing story and lore behind it, sci-fi story, which I love sci-fi. That's the game. That would be my game. So maybe you can understand now how hyped I was, how incredibly hyped I was for this game. And then it finally came out. And it has been, till this day, the biggest disappointment as far as video games go for me. I can't think of another one. Maybe that Goku Game Boy Advance game where he was fighting dogs and you would get killed by dogs. Goku getting killed by dogs. Besides that, it was still worse. It was still worse than that game. You have to understand my feelings. I was so not hurt by it, but I was so disappointed in it that I would talk to everyone about this. People thought I was crazy because I would talk about it. Hey, have you heard about the Destiny game? Yeah, it's such a disappointment because this and 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 this. Let's just say that there was a lot wrong with the first Destiny. So let's go through it. The story made absolutely no sense.
No sense. No sense.
I can't stress that enough. How it was completely. It was gibberish. You were just thrown in the world. No explanation. You don't know what's going on.
Who are you?
Why have you been watching us?
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain. I will.
Oh, really? Because you never actually explained that. The only good elements of the story was the lore. So it had a fantastic lore that wasn't included in the game. So you had to find these little lore pieces everywhere hidden throughout the world, and then you had to go back to an app, a Destiny app, and you had to read the lore through there. But they didn't really explain anything in the game. And that was a complete letdown, man, because the lore had such great potential. When I say it has potential, I mean it literally could have been the new Star Wars of video games, Destiny. It really could have been, if they would have just stuck the landing, and they completely flopped. To make a game like Destiny,
go on,
where you have this huge universe, this galaxy, and the technology and the lore that ties it makes it seem like you go anywhere as fast as possible. You want to be in Venus? Bam, you're in Venus.
We're in Venus.
You want to go to the moon? Bam, you're in the moon.
We're on the moon.
They made it so big, so expansive, yet they made these
tiny
levels, maybe the size of Halo levels, a little bit bigger than Halo levels. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous, especially because they advertise this game as having a world where if you see it, you can go there.
I mean, it's amazing. This is all coming right out of our engine. All that stuff, if you ran out there, it's all playable terrain. I mean, it's...
It was a complete garbage lie.
Jeez.
Maybe that's what they were thinking, and maybe when they came down to actually making the game, say, "Hey guys, we can't do this.
Oh no,
we can't process this much information with using 7th generation consoles or whatever the case."
What was I saying?
The point is, you shouldn't have advertised it like that if that's not what you produced. And these levels were so tiny, it was so disappointing, especially after a game like Borderlands that was
Jimmy Borderlands
5 years old at that time, with a tiny budget.
How tiny was
a
it?
micro fraction compared to Bungie,
I don't get it.
and their levels were 10 times the size of Destiny worlds. You go to a planet, and it was literally one tiny level per planet. So it made it seem like constrained, very constrained. I wasn't expecting something ridiculous. I was expecting to the levels of maybe a Borderlands, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit smaller. It's fine, but I was comparing it to that game, especially because it's a similar game. It's a shooter, it's a RPG, so that was a complete disappointment. On to the next one. The game was repetitive and had barely any content. Vanilla Destiny, and even the first expansion, the Crota Xander, whatever it was, I can't even remember at this time, and I'm too lazy to go research it. The content was so limited. They had you running the same levels, the same instances. Now, if you don't know what an instance is in an MMO,
for instance,
it's basically that you enter a dungeon of sorts, and it's just you and your other party members that are experienced that instance, so no one else can join and you can't see other players. So
did I leave the stove on?
In any instance was so limited that you would repeat the same levels over and over again, sometimes backward. They wanted to change it up. They knew that people were starved for content so bad that they actually made some of these levels backward, so you wouldn't seem like you're doing something different and looking at it from a different angle. Not good. And finally, the other big letdown that I had was the voice acting.
Don't believe you.
Yes, the voice acting.
Okay, I believe you.
The voice that you hear the most,
Barbara Streisand,
is Peter Dinklage, because he was your ghost. He was the little character that always hangs out with you. That dude, the Dink, he completely mailed his performance in. It was so bad. He sounded like he didn't want to be there.
Meow.
There is this interview, and I spent hours trying to find it on YouTube, but I could not find it. But I know I saw this interview, and I'm not going to say he said these exact words. But in the interview, you can tell that he just wasn't interested in the role. He never wanted to do the role.
Do a better role.
Maybe they just thought, hey, let's get this guy. He's a big name. Game of Thrones is really popular. We got to get him. Give him, throw him money. And I feel like that's what they did, and they didn't care if the person was at all interested in the role or interested in the lore or anything, because it seems like he doesn't... I want to say he said that he doesn't like to do any comic book or video game roles. I could be wrong, but you could tell he was uninterested, and it shows in his performance. And as far as like all the other actors, these great, incredible actors, Bill Nighy, Peter Stormare, Lance Reddick.
What's that other guy?
Nathan Fillion. You barely hear them. They have a few lines. You barely hear these voice actors. And that's why the voice acting was a complete letdown. Another thing is, before I continue on, is the game world itself was kind of empty feeling. Like it was just like a ghost town. You would go out to the planets and nothing was going on. When you look at games like World of Warcraft, you see different kind of different dynamics happening around the world, whether it be a huge enemy that you weren't expecting or some NPCs walking around. Even games like Breath of the Wild have that, where they just have a random NPC. Even games like the Bethesda game.
Oh, wow.
How is that game escaping me right now? I own it. The RPG game. Ooh.
Shake your body, baby, do that
Elder
song. I know you
Scrolls.
can't control yourself
Elder
any longer.
Scrolls. Oblivion, right?
Skyrim.
Even games like Elder Scrolls have just NPCs walking around that you run into. Not Destiny. It was just completely barren, completely empty. And that's the feeling that I was left with after playing that game, was completely empty. Now, it did have positives. This wasn't just a total letdown, because look, and this was a lot of people tell me, you play this game so much, yet you complain about it so much.
Yeah, what's up with that?
That doesn't matter. That does not really necessarily mean that I'm not completely and absolutely disappointed by it. Just because I liked a few things about it doesn't mean that the high hopes that I had for it does some things right. Doesn't mean I don't have the right to be disappointed, or doesn't mean that you can't be disappointed in something even after it doing a few things right. For example, the shooting mechanics are absolutely incredible. Destiny shooting mechanics are on point. They're awesome. The abilities are pretty cool. The PvP was pretty cool. And that's it. The PvE wasn't that great, except for the raids. The raids were actually something special. Now, the raids were kind of like dungeons that you would do, like a 6-man dungeon that you had to do. And even though they could be very glitchy and they were incredibly frustrating and it takes a long time to do, it was a cool accomplishment to get that done with 5 other people. So that was good. So basically, the raids, shooting mechanics, and the powers and abilities. That was it. As far as everything else, it was absolute complete letdown. I gave up on Destiny shortly after that. I stuck around a little bit because I wanted them to see what they were going to do. Bungie said that we're hearing you. That they were saying they do talk to their user base a lot, so that is appreciated. And they're saying that we hear your complaints, we're addressing issues, we're trying to make this game better. So I decided to stick around a little bit. I stuck around for the first expansion, and then shortly after that, I've had enough. There wasn't really any major changes made to the game, made to the story, nothing that I thought that to the world itself. And I just kind of gave up on Bungie. Very sad day. Very sad moment. Gave up on Bungie gave up on Destiny for a long time. Gave up on Bungie for a long time. And then it was announced in 2017, I think, was announced that Destiny 2 was going to be released. Or 2016 or something like that. And it was released in this year, in 2018. And I must say that I waited for reviews. The reviews came out. They said it was pretty good. And I waited and I waited. And finally, the newest expansion came out called Forsaken and that was released. And I got this for $60 at GameStop. I got it, and that it actually includes the original vanilla Destiny 2 game. It has 2 expansions after that, and it has the newest expansion, Forsaken. And I can honestly say, this is a completely different game than the first Destiny. And I'm happy to say that they actually did listen to a lot of complaints, and they are making this game a lot better. I'm so excited to see what they do with Destiny 3 because this game is more along the lines of what I expected back in 2014. If they would have released something like this, I would have been fine with it. It still would not have met my expectations or the expectations that Bungie themselves built this game up to be. However, this game, it would have been fine. It would have been great in 2014. It's still incredible experience. If you go experience this game right now, you will have a great time. If you like all the things that I previously said, if you like sci-fi, if you like MMOs, if you like RPGs, shooting mechanics, go buy this game. go play it. I got this, like I said, $60 is a great deal at GameStop for PC. I don't know about the console versions.
Yeah, time to take back the light, take on the fight, harness the energy with all your might.
So yeah,
I believe that Bungie is actually living up to their expectations now, which is amazing. And I just can't wait to see what Destiny 3 brings. So that was my point of view on the rise, the fall, and the rise again of Destiny with Bungie. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree with me? What do you guys think of Destiny? Have you played it? Would you be interested in a game like that? Let me know below. And thank you so much for sticking around and watching this. And until next time, later.
Yeah, time to take back the light, take on the fight, harness the energy with all your might, shine for humanity and make sure it's bright, protect community and never lose sight, claim your name and your home and history, believe in ability to achieve a victory.